What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and people on the internet have called me lots of things, but the one thing you can't call me is late for dinner. But the one thing you can call me is a Chad enjoyer of a good space skirmish war game. I cut my teeth as a small, tiny child on Battlefleet Gothic. I can't find my own Battlefleet Gothic fleet because it was mostly made out of garbage, and I'm sure we played all of those rules totally wrong. And Star Wars Armada remains my second favorite miniature game of all time, which is why I was excited when the folks over at the Brutality Skirmish War Game offered to send me a copy of their Brutalspace combat system. The Brutality War Game is a miniature agnostic gaming system. It's D10 based and alternating activations. It's also entirely free. I think it's probably important to preface that if you go to brutalityskirmishwargame.com, you can just download it. Like, there's no reason not to. And being model agnostic, it allows you to use your own or even create your own miniatures. The game includes a ton of systems for actually customizing your ships, which I think is really where this system shines. So let's go ahead and dive in quickly to the mechanics of the game and talk about how it works on the table. Nice. So as I mentioned, Brutalspace is an alternating activation combat system. So both players will go back and forth activating either a ship or a ground force if you're using the ground force system. That's right, there's ground forces in this game too, which is rad. I have a bunch of ships here. I've dusted off some of my old Armada collection. It's actually nice to get these guys back on the table, so that's cool. Fortunately, the game system is model agnostic, so you can use whatever models that you want. The base that the ship is mounted on doesn't actually matter. Only the central mounting peg of the ship. Basically, you measure from the middle of the miniature rather than the base itself. So you can mount them on whichever bases you want to. However, this being a space-based naval combat game, firing arcs and turning radius are important. So I have printed out my one little cute little cruiser right here. Look at this little cutie pie. But this guy has 90-degree turning arcs out off of each quadrant, which is how the game measures turning radius. Each ship has a 45-degree turn rate. So in a ship like this that has the quadrants demarcated out, simply mark the position of one of the corners that you are rotating towards, and then rotate that center mark to whichever corner that is to determine its maneuvering and then move it forward. Now, most ships in the game do have a 360-degree firing arc. That said, you do have the option to actually allow them to fire only in a 180-degree firing arc. So essentially, the game system allows you to assign prow-mounted weapons to your ships rather than turret-mounted weapons, which gives you a +1 to hit bonus with that weapon, which, to be honest, is super duper cool. If you want to theme your feat as being very aggressive, you can do that, and the game gives you a bonus for it, but obviously you will not be able to fire if your opponent is behind you. Now, the ship customization and design systems are one of the big highlights of the game. Each ship is broken down into modules. Most games will run a total of probably between 8 to 10 modules across your fleet, and those can be contained within smaller ships, or you can construct larger ships out of multiple modules. Now, each of the modules suffers damage independently. However, each one of them also gives that ship special actions it can do. So larger ships will have more to do during their activation, able to activate multiple systems and accomplish multiple actions, but be less useful within the alternating activation system of the game. Whereas smaller ships are more dedicated to a single role. However, you are going to have activation control most of the time. Okay, cat, come on. No, you can't be on the table. I'm recording. Now, that said, activation control is always an important thing to consider in alternating activation games. And there is a little bit of a comeback mechanic within the activation system. I don't have the repeated playthroughs to know whether or not the alternating activation system is gameable by taking sort of multiple small ships that are buying activations for larger ships, but I do think that is one thing to keep in mind, that you may have to house roll in your play group. Now, each of the modules within the army construction is extremely unique. There are special abilities or special deployments like ambushers, stealth ships, scout ships, things like that, or just big beatstick brawlers with lots of defensive technology on them. I do think that there's some insane combos in there. I don't know whether or not any of them are particularly more or less powerful than each other, and I think if you're playing with friends, you can probably construct some counterplay within the system, but within your gaming group, that is probably something to keep an eye on. But I do appreciate the modularity of the system, no pun intended. It also allows you to alter unique faction traits that you can stack on top of that. There are unique leader abilities as well as item abilities you can unlock during campaign play to further customize your ships. The system is actually incredibly deep when it comes down to unit construction. Now, apart from that, the combat system is pretty straightforward. Each ship has a dexterity value value as well as a save value. You basically roll a number of attacks that your modules will instruct you to do so against the dexterity value of the target. They can then save that damage. But there are a lot of special modifiers that modules or actions can give the attacking ship to move the math in the favor of the attacker. If you don't have any of that though, all of the attacks are based on the defenses of the defending ship. The attacker is just contributing attack dice to an attack pool that they'll roll against them. Now, the combat system of the game is relatively straightforward, but where this game really shines is in its expanded content. One of the big draws of any sort of naval-based miniatures game is its ability to mesh with a more standard ground-based game. Included within the rulebook is a ground combat system that actually uses the exact same space combat system just for ground-based miniatures. It's a little bit simplified and has a slightly different set of model creation rules and upgrades, but what it allows you to do is play both the space-based system and a ground game simultaneously, even meshing their activations together, meaning that you can use your activations to get the upper hand in either the fleet battle or the ground battle, or using them to support one another with a variety of support actions. While again, the ground combat system is relatively simplistic when compared to a game that focuses specifically on ground-based combat, the big benefit here is that you get to use these two systems in concert without having to construct your own house rules or learning another system. You don't even need to pick up a second rule book. It's all in the one book. Now, on top of that, there's also ridiculously in-depth rules for campaigns and legacy systems that are so in-depth and far-reaching that they even include system for things like crews going crazy, staring off into the depths of void, and being subjected to stellar phenomena.
Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see.
There are also mechanics for traders, trading items, developing new technologies, upgrading your ships, and gaining traits over the course of a campaign. The campaign and ground-to-air combat systems acting together is, I think, really where Brutalspace combat system shines. There are also solo play and AI mechanics for those who don't have an established gaming group to play with or want to learn the game themselves, and the rules are also available for free. Now, that said, you can get it at the Brutality Skirmish Wargame website. That's brutalityskirmishwargame.com, where you can order a hard copy full color version just like this one. This also has the benefit of including a lot of additional content, things like lore, faction ally rules, and stuff like that. While the game is model agnostic, it does come with its own lore, but with the amount of customization available to not only your ships, but also your factions, you can theme it to play whatever you want. On top of that, Brutality Skirmish Wargame also has its own YouTube channel. I will link that in the video description, and they post fairly often with battle reports from not only their other Skirmish Wargames, but also a lot of content about the Brutalspace Wargame. So if you want to see it in action, go check them out over there. So big thanks for the folks over at the Brutality Wargame for sending me a copy of the rulebook. It was a pleasure to look at, and I hope you enjoyed this quick review. Go check it out for yourself if you want to take a look. Again, the rules are free. There's like no reason not to. Big thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Thanks as well to everybody who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, Twitch subscribers, and all you people are great. And I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming. Activation system of the game, but that was so long.